When the woman who betrayed me and stole my husband invited me to their wedding, I laughed so hard I cried. They didn't know that under my dress, I was hiding the secret that would make the bride begging me to disappear. No one expected what I told them right before they said, I do. It was the richest shame of their lives. Before we continue, hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments what city or state you're watching from. When the woman who betrayed me and stole my husband invited me to their wedding, I laughed so hard I cried. They didn't know that under my dress, I was hiding the secret that would make the bride begging me to disappear. No one expected what I told them right before they said, I do. It was the richest shame of their lives. I'm Naomi, and I'm 43 years old. I live in Boston, run a small design consulting firm now, and I used to believe in love. That's the clean version. The dirty version? The moment Veronica, that woman, stole my husband, Alex, and used his access to financially destroy the architectural firm I built for 20 years, I knew my life was over. I was a shell of a mother, ashamed, and expelled from my own life. So when the wedding invitation arrived 3 months ago, a creamy bespoke card mailed by Veronica herself, with a tiny handwritten note saying, "Come on, Naomi, it'll be fun to relive the past." I didn't cry. I didn't throw it out. I just felt a cold, sharp clarity. It wasn't about the marriage. It was about the audacity. And that was the moment my revenge plan solidified. I went. Of course I went. Right now, I'm standing inside the grand ballroom of the Beacon Hill Club. The air smells like expensive lilies and old money. My jaw is set. My posture is perfect, a performance I've perfected over 3 years of rebuilding my life from ashes. I can see Alex across the room, looking polished, nervous, and utterly oblivious. Veronica, the bride-to-be, is radiant, wearing a custom gown I'm sure cost more than my first home. She catches my eye from across the room and sends a smirk that is supposed to convey pity, but I see the fear hidden beneath. I'm the ghost they thought they buried. The thing is, they only know about the cheating. They know about the divorce. They know I lost my business. What they don't know is that for the last 2 years, I haven't been mourning, I've been working. They don't know that under the elegant, dark velvet dress I'm wearing, a dress that cost more than I should have spent, I carry a secure USB drive and a fully charged burner phone. And on that phone, secured by a complex algorithm, is a folder labeled, "The Truth About the Veronica and Alex Partnership." It's not just evidence of infidelity. It's the documented trail of multi-million-dollar tax fraud and legal misconduct that Veronica committed, facilitated by Alex's insider knowledge of my former clients. I was keeping it secret, waiting for the one moment when exposure would cause maximum emotional damage and legal ramification. And what better moment than the exchange of vows? Veronica, the architect who built her success on the ruins of my career, is now walking towards me. Her smile is toxic, perfectly white. "Naomi, you actually came. I thought you'd be too busy consulting." She stresses the word with venom, mocking my step down from principal architect to consultant. "Veronica," I reply, my voice steady, my eyes meeting hers without flinching. "Busy getting my affairs in order. It's a beautiful venue. You two deserve all the best." I lie, the words tasting like copper. She laughs, that high, brittle sound. "Oh, we will. We're unstoppable now." "Unstoppable," she said. That's what I needed to hear. That hubris. The final push. I excused myself, heading for the bar, but really I was just finding the perfect vantage point. The ceremony is starting. The music swells, and I can hear my heartbeat pounding a war drum beneath my ribs. This isn't just about Alex anymore. It's about the woman who thought she could humiliate me, watch me implore for mercy, and walk away clean. She's about to learn that a scorned woman in her 40s, a mother with nothing left to lose, is the most dangerous kind of predator. I watched Alex take his place at the altar. I watched Veronica glide down the aisle, her face a mask of triumphant joy. They had everything. They were safe. But they forgot one thing. They invited the only person who knew exactly where the foundation of their perfect life was weakest. And I was holding the sledgehammer. The whole congregation is now seated, waiting. My hand is on the burner phone in my purse. The clock is ticking. The celebrant steps forward and clears his throat, ready to begin. The moment is here. They are finally trapped, and I am the hunter. I just need to wait for the words, I do. But before that, I need to survive the next few minutes of this social circus. The music stopped. The room fell silent. I managed to secure a small table near the back, perfectly positioned to watch the whole show unfold without being immediately in the crosshairs. But in a crowd like this, all our former colleagues, my ex-sister-in-law, even my neighbor from years ago, an oasis of solitude is impossible. They came for the wedding, but they stayed for the inevitable drama starring me. I could feel the eyes, the judging stares, the whispers about the poor, humiliated Naomi, who just couldn't stay home. It was infuriating. Every single one of them, most of whom knew Alex had been cheating for a year before I found out, and several who knew Veronica was actively using his access to undercut my business, they were all here, dressed in their finest, celebrating the very people who had wronged me. They saw me as the tragic figure, the one who was supposed to be curled up at home, quietly crying into a glass of cheap wine, not here, poised and serene. "Naomi, so good to see you," a voice chirped. It was Sarah, a former colleague. She approached with that saccharine smile people use when they aren't sure if they should offer a hug or a condolences card. "Sarah, you look lovely," I said, a small, genuine smile curving my lips. "I've learned to weaponize politeness." She leaned in conspiratorially. "Honestly, I was surprised you accepted the invitation. It took incredible strength." "Oh, strength has nothing to do with it," I replied, sipping my sparkling water. "It took a very deep curiosity to see the end of their story. Every good story deserves an audience, doesn't it?" Her eyes widened, but before she could press further, Veronica's voice cut through the air, sharp and calculating. She had snuck up behind Sarah, her perfect, diamond-studded hand resting on her arm. "Naomi wasn't invited to be an audience, Sarah. She was invited to show that there are no hard feelings. We're all adults now, moving past the little hiccup of the past." "A hiccup," I repeated, turning to face her fully, allowing my gaze to sweep slowly from the top of her intricate updo down to the hem of her expensive dress. "Is that what you call corporate sabotage and a 2-year affair? My children and I called it losing our entire life savings, but hiccup is certainly more chic." Veronica's smile faltered, just for a millisecond. That was my hit. That tiny moment of discomfort, the realization that I wasn't just going to be silent and graceful, that I was willing to use words. "Well, you've moved on, haven't you? You're a consultant now. Alex and I have built something rich and beautiful from the ground up." She gestured around the luxurious venue. "A new beginning." "It certainly is a new beginning," I agreed, leaning closer. The smell of her perfume was cloying. "And speaking of building from the ground up, I've been doing a little digging into the foundation of your new partnership. It's fascinating how many corners were cut. Legally speaking, of course." The blood drained from her face. That's when I knew she hadn't just forgotten about my existence. She had feared this. This quiet, cold-blooded confrontation. She recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. "You're still as dramatic as ever, Naomi. Honestly, it's a wedding. Why don't you try to enjoy it?" "Oh, I plan to, I promised," my voice dropping to a whisper. "I promise, Veronica, this is going to be the most unforgettable event of your life. Something you'll carry with you into the courthouse." I watched her flinch again, realizing my words weren't a generic threat, but a highly specific, loaded accusation. She quickly pulled Sarah away, claiming the photographer needed her. "Coward. They can dress it up with flowers and silk, but at the core, their relationship is built on deceit. And deceit always has a paper trail." The memory of how she took everything from me years ago flashed behind my eyes, turning my cold resolve into burning certainty. I wouldn't just watch, I would participate in the destruction. I looked at my watch. 20 minutes until the vows. 20 minutes until I pushed the button. But first, I needed to remind myself exactly why I was willing to risk everything for this moment. The room lights dimmed as the wedding party took their positions. The air was thick with expectation, but all I could taste was the bitter residue of what I'd lost. People talk about heartbreak, but they rarely talk about the trauma of professional sabotage. That's the wound that cut the deepest, the one that truly made me the woman I am today. Alex and I started our firm, Metropolis Designs, 20 years ago. It was my baby, my intellectual property, my network. He managed the finances. I designed the buildings. We were a power couple, or so I thought. Then Veronica, a younger, hungrier architect, came into our orbit. She started as a competitor, but quickly became something far worse. The affair? That was just the painful, messy backdrop. The real crime was calculated. Alex, being the financial manager of our shared firm, had access to every proprietary client list, every bid strategy, and every future development plan. Veronica, who was struggling to secure major contracts, suddenly started winning them. Not just winning, but undercutting us by tiny, impossible margins. I remember that day I discovered it all. I wasn't looking for proof of cheating. I was looking for the leak that was hemorrhaging our company. I found it in an encrypted chat log on Alex's old laptop. Veronica wasn't just sleeping with him. She was demanding trade secrets as a pillow talk price. She was using my work, my genius, my 15-hour days to build her own empire, leaving me with nothing but debt and a destroyed reputation. When I confronted Alex, he didn't even try to implore for forgiveness. He just packed a bag and left, taking the bulk of the liquid assets he had systematically diverted over 6 months. He stood there, smug, telling me that Veronica was better suited to the life he wanted now, a life funded by the very clients I had secured. I was left to sell off everything, including the house, just to cover the firm's debts and secure a small, miserable apartment for myself and our 2 teenage boys. I was financially expelled from my own success. That was the humiliation I carried, heavier than any shame from the divorce. The world saw a dumped wife. I saw a brilliant woman robbed of her life's work. Now, Alex is standing up front, the picture of a rich, successful man about to marry his equally successful, devious partner. They had merged their empires. My empire, his money, and Veronica's ruthless ambition. I watched as Alex turned to face his bride, a dopey, infatuated look on his face. He still thought she was worth it. Veronica, looking like a snow queen in white silk, finally reached the altar. She looked right at me, just one final, triumphant glance, a silent confirmation. I won. You lost. But she hadn't won. She just gave me a few years to gather the perfect ammunition. I had to let them build their castle higher so that the fall would be more spectacular. And now, the cornerstone of their partnership, their new, highly profitable joint venture, was about to crumble. The celebrant, a tall, imposing man with a booming voice, began the service. Dearly beloved, he started. The point of no return. My heart didn't race. It became ice. My hand reached for the phone hidden in my clutch. The timer was set. I was ready to release the digital hounds. I just needed to ensure the connection was solid. I felt the vibration of the burner phone confirming the network handshake. The data package was ready to be deployed. I needed the ultimate moment of commitment. I needed them to stand there, completely exposed, for the world to see what their foundation was truly built on. The celebrant began reciting the long, tedious passage on the sanctity of marriage. It was almost time. I held my breath, waiting for the cue. The clock was ticking, metaphorically and literally. The official ceremony was structured, efficient, and, to me, sickeningly reverent. The celebrant was talking about commitment, honesty, and building a future together. Words that felt like sandpaper against the fresh wound of my reality. Every word he spoke was a direct contradiction to the 2 people standing before him. I focused on the details. The expensive lace on Veronica's gown, the nervous sweat beading on Alex's forehead, the sheer number of security guards subtly positioned around the perimeter. All of it a testament to the rich life they had stolen, the life they were trying to sanctify with this public display. I felt a sudden, sharp, and unexpected moment of doubt. It hit me like a physical blow. Was this really me? Naomi, the mother of 2, the woman who always prided herself on being the better person, the ethical architect? Was I really about to blow up a wedding in front of 300 people, causing a scene that would live forever on social media and that my children might eventually see? I felt a wave of cold shame wash over me, a feeling that this act of vengeance might make me as ugly as them. Then I closed my eyes and saw my youngest son, Daniel, 16, staring at the eviction notice on our old house. I remembered the tearful phone call from my eldest, Liam, 18, when he had to give up his university spot because the college fund had been mysteriously depleted. It wasn't about the money. It was about the lost futures, the opportunities they were expelled from, all because Veronica and Alex wanted more, faster and dirtier. My self-doubt evaporated, replaced by a granite-hard resolve. This wasn't vengeance. This was justice for my boys. This was me, finally, taking the power back and stopping the cycle of their deceit. I looked down at the burner phone in my lap. I had the documents. Not just the evidence of the financial crimes, but the comprehensive legal filing, complete with a verified anonymous tip to the relevant authorities, all scheduled to go live and public the instant I hit send. It was airtight. The filing included a link to a private cloud drive with copies of every fraudulent invoice, every tax loophole they exploited, and emails detailing Veronica's plan to use their new joint venture as a high-volume laundering mechanism. I took a deep, centering breath. The celebrant was wrapping up his philosophical preamble. He looked at Alex. Alex, do you take Veronica to be your lawfully wedded wife, to live together in the covenant of marriage? Will you love her, comfort her, honor and keep her, in sickness and in health, and forsaking all others, remain only unto her, so long as you both shall live? Alex's voice, usually booming, came out a nervous squeak. I do. A ripple of relief went through the audience. I felt my lip curl. You do you, Alex? You commit to a life of legal partnership with a documented fraudster? Good. The celebrant turned to Veronica. This was it. The absolute climax of their victory. The moment I had been waiting for. I gripped the phone, my finger hovering over the send button that would distribute the files and trigger the official complaint. The celebrant smiled kindly. Veronica, do you take Alex to be your lawfully wedded husband, to live together in the covenant of marriage? Will you love him, comfort him, honor and keep him, in sickness and in health, and forsaking all others, remain only unto him, so long as you both shall live? Veronica paused, a perfect, teary-eyed hesitation designed for the cameras. She looked at Alex, then she looked at me, a final, victorious flash in her eyes. She inhaled, ready to deliver the final word. I. Veronica paused, her voice thick with fake emotion, ready to deliver the final, crushing blow, the word do, that would seal my defeat and her triumphant beginning. But before the word could fully leave her mouth, I acted. In a smooth, practiced motion, my hand slipped into my clutch. I wasn't subtle. I didn't need to be. I pulled out the burner phone. My eyes locked directly on Veronica's face. She saw the phone, and in the split second before I hit the button, her eyes changed, from triumphant joy to pure, unadulterated terror. She recognized the look on my face, the same cold certainty she had when she delivered the divorce papers to my lawyer. Click. The encrypted folder, containing the financial documentation and the official complaint to the IRS and state regulatory bodies, was deployed. The anonymous tip was activated. The damage was done, all within the space of 1 second. Veronica visibly froze. She didn't know what I had done, but she knew I had done something. The word do died on her lips, leaving a gaping, terrified silence. The entire room waited, thinking she was overcome with emotion. Alex, however, was already looking at me, confused by Veronica's sudden panic. He saw my face, utterly emotionless, and then he saw the phone in my hand. He knew instinctively that this was not a moment of weakness on my part, but an act of war. Veronica, the celebrant, prompted gently, oblivious. She tried to force the word out. Beep. Beep. The sound wasn't from a phone. It was the loud, insistent ring of the private, secure line reserved for the venue's coordinator, placed on the stand right next to the celebrant. The coordinator, a frantic-looking young man in a headset, rushed up. He whispered urgently to the celebrant, pointing toward the back door. The celebrant's professional demeanor shattered. His eyes widened, scanning the room, landing momentarily on me, then Alex. He cleared his throat, his voice suddenly grave. I apologize. We must take a very brief, unscheduled intermission. There appears to be a matter of extreme urgency. A collective murmur swept through the room, But before anyone could start speculating, Alex's own personal cell phone, the one he never let leave his sight, rang with a shrill, insistent tone. It wasn't a standard ring. It was the alert he used for his rich clients and the most critical business news. He checked the screen, and the color drained from his face entirely. He had a look of utter, desperate shame. The screens around the venue, which were displaying beautiful, staged photos of Alex and Veronica, suddenly flickered. They didn't go dark. Instead, a headline, a terrifying, professional-looking banner, flashed across the screen for a millisecond before the technical staff could react. Boston architect faces impoundment over extensive tax fraud allegations. The room erupted. The confusion turned into pandemonium as the guests started checking their own phones, suddenly receiving news alerts I had timed perfectly with my digital deployment. Veronica didn't even notice. She was staring at Alex, then at me, her white gloves clenching the bouquet until the lilies started to tear. Alex didn't speak to the crowd. He didn't speak to Veronica. He just fixed his gaze on me, moving with terrifying speed, pushing past his best man. He was no longer the smug groom. He was the cornered animal, eyes wide with the full, devastating realization of what I had just done. He stopped 2 feet from me, his voice a low, guttural hiss that only I could hear. "Naomi, what the hell have you done?" I looked up at him, calm, cold, and utterly free for the first time in years. "I've started the real investigation, Alex. The one that should have happened 3 years ago. The one you two thought you were so rich and so clever to avoid." His face contorted in a silent implore for mercy. He was about to speak, about to deny everything. But I needed the audience to hear the truth, the whole truth, about the woman he chose. The room was no longer a place of celebration. It was a theater of war, and I was holding the spotlight. People were shouting, lawyers were being called, and the technical staff had completely failed to stop the news alerts from flashing across their screens. Veronica, frozen in terror at the altar, finally moved. She screamed Alex's name, her voice cracking the elegant silence. Alex, however, didn't look away from me. "This is blackmail, Naomi. You can't do this. I'll fight you. I'll take everything you have left." His words were a desperate, impotent threat. "Blackmail requires a negotiation, Alex," I stated, my voice ringing clearly, drawing the attention of the nearest guests. I knew the security guards were moving, but I needed to finish. "This is a legal complaint, filed and verified. You see, I wasn't just exposing your affair. I was exposing your partner's long-term pattern of fraud." Veronica stumbled down the steps, her beautiful gown trailing behind her like a shroud. "Fraud? What are you talking about? It was a business dispute." "You're just jealous," she shrieked, tears finally mixing with her perfect makeup. I turned my focus entirely on her, ignoring Alex, forcing Veronica to confront the true crime. "A business dispute? No, Veronica. I'm talking about the shell corporations you used to divert client payments on the Boston waterfront tower project, the one Alex got you with my old client list. I'm talking about how you claim non-existent subcontractors, how you inflated material costs by 400%, and how Alex signed off on the internal compliance reports for 2 years. A hush fell over the immediate circle of guests. They weren't just hearing gossip. They were hearing detailed, verifiable, illegal activities. The word waterfront tower was a key phrase in the Boston development community, a project everyone in the room knew. And do you know what the worst part is? I continued, making sure my voice carried, my eyes piercing hers. The money wasn't just to make you rich. It was to systematically bankrupt my firm and prevent me from receiving a fair settlement that was crucial for my children's college fund. Veronica started shaking her head violently, looking to Alex for rescue. "She's lying. She's a delusional, vengeful ex-wife. Don't listen to her." "Am I?" I reached into my clutch and pulled out the secure USB drive. I held it up for the room to see. This little drive holds a complete forensic analysis, signed and sealed by a former FBI financial crimes expert. It includes the email chain where you, Veronica, specifically instructed Alex to move our remaining liquid assets into an offshore account the day before. I filed for divorce. That wasn't just cheating, Veronica. That was malicious financial conspiracy. Alex's father, a prominent lawyer, was now pushing through the crowd, his face aghast. He grabbed Alex's arm. "We need to leave. Now." But Alex just stared at me, his eyes full of the realization that he hadn't just gotten caught cheating. He was now legally bound to a woman who had pulled him into a massive federal investigation. He was facing everything from fines to jail time, and it was all because of the little note she wrote. "Come on, it'll be fun." I placed the burner phone gently back into my clutch. My role here was done. The planting of the seed, the public humiliation, the legal trigger, all complete. I didn't need to stay and implore or argue. My victory was in the chaos I had created, a perfectly orchestrated storm. I turned my back on the screaming bride and the defeated groom. It was time to make my exit, leaving behind the pieces of their broken, illegal empire. The immediate aftermath was a deafening roar of whispers, shouts, and the frantic clicking of camera phones. I walked straight past the distraught wedding planner, past the security guards who suddenly looked unsure of whom to apprehend, and towards the main exit. I didn't run. I moved with the slow, deliberate pace of a queen leaving her throne after a successful coup. I was no longer the expelled ex-wife. I was the agent of justice. As I neared the massive mahogany doors, I heard Veronica's high-pitched wail, "Make her stop. Alex, you have to make her implore for forgiveness." Too late, darling. I was long past the begging stage. I slipped out into the relative quiet of the antechamber, feeling the cool air conditioning on my face. My victory lap, however, was about to be interrupted by the one person who knew the true gravity of my actions, my lawyer, Michael. He was waiting exactly where we planned, leaning against a pillar, looking deceptively casual in a dark suit. He looked at me, a mixture of awe and professional concern on his face. "Naomi, that was efficient. The press release and the official complaint? Time to the second. Did the court accept the petition?" I asked, cutting to the only thing that mattered. He nodded, adjusting his tie. "Filed, stamped, and a preliminary investigation has been launched. The IRS and the state attorney's office both received the anonymized, encrypted data package, all perfectly legal, ethically sourced, and impossible to trace back to you personally. We used 3 different shell networks, just like we planned." A wave of dizzying relief washed over me. It was real. It wasn't just a threat, it was a binding legal action. The consequences were no longer social. They were criminal. "And Alex and Veronica?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Their new joint venture, Apex Structures? Frozen. All accounts, pending investigation. Their attempt to be a rich power couple just hit a wall called federal felony. Their assets are about to become very illiquid." Michael allowed himself a small, rare smile. "You didn't just ruin a party, Naomi. You initiated a full-scale financial audit that will dismantle their entire operation." I felt a sudden, profound exhaustion. It wasn't the cathartic rush I expected. It was the deep bone-tiredness of a war that had finally ended. I had spent 3 years calculating this moment, living a double life where half of me was a struggling single mother and the other half was a relentless forensic auditor. "Let's go," I said. "I need to get home before the real media circus starts." As we walked out onto the street, the flashing lights of a news van were already approaching the venue. The security guards were now attempting to form a perimeter, shouting orders into walkie-talkies. The wedding guests, the same people who had once pitied me, were spilling onto the sidewalk, arguing on their phones, their faces plastered with a mixture of shock and opportunistic gossip. Their perfect Saturday afternoon was now history. I got into Michael's waiting town car. As the car pulled away, I looked back at the grand doors of the Beacon Hill Club. Veronica and Alex were standing there, illuminated by the harsh flash of the news cameras. Veronica was hysterical, her makeup ruined, her beautiful white dress stained. Alex was arguing fiercely with his father. They were no longer the power couple. They were criminals exposed, trapped in a public moment of shame. I closed my eyes. The justice was secured, the vengeance executed. But what now? The silence in the car felt heavier than the chaos I had just left behind. The day after the non-wedding felt surreal, bathed in the harsh light of reality. I was home, safe in my modest apartment, staring at the muted television screen. Every major local news channel was running the same story, the catastrophic implosion of the wedding of the year, complete with fuzzy footage of Veronica's meltdown and the infamous headline flashing over the screens. The comment sections online were brutal, a collective expression of public schadenfreude against the newly exposed rich fraudsters. I wasn't watching the TV for joy. I was watching it for confirmation. The confirmation that the system, though slow and flawed, was finally working in my favor. Justice was never meant to be sweet, I realized. It was meant to be cold, definitive, and legally binding. The phone rang, its ID flashing unknown number. I knew who it was. My heart hammered, but I picked it up on the third ring. I needed to hear the sound of his voice broken for closure. Naomi? It's Alex. His voice was raw, laced with panic and fury. Hello, Alex. I assume you're calling from a burner phone, considering your primary number is likely being monitored. My voice was flat, professional. Don't do this. You have to stop this. You can still pull the tip. They'll never trace it back to you. We can talk, we can settle. I can give you everything you want, he pleaded, desperation coating every word. Everything I want? That would be 3 years of my life back, Alex. The confidence I lost, the nights I spent crying because I thought I was a failure, the college fund you nearly emptied. None of that is negotiable. And none of that can be settled now. The law is involved. Veronica is going crazy, Naomi. She says you set us up. You framed us. I let out a genuine, humorless laugh. Did she? Tell Veronica that I didn't frame her. I merely recorded her. All of the evidence, the emails, the forged signatures, the payment logs, all came directly from your shared servers. I just put it in a neat little package and delivered it to the right people. She should be asking you why you trusted a woman who had already proven she was capable of betrayal. His voice dropped to a snarl. You're a wicked, wicked woman. You came to our wedding just to watch us suffer. You wanted the shame. I came to deliver a consequence, Alex. You and Veronica invited me to watch you celebrate the destruction of my life. I simply returned the favor by showing you what true destruction looks like. Now you're facing legal troubles that could cost you everything, including your freedom. That's not vengeance, Alex. That's a fair exchange. He hung up, the sound of the line going dead more satisfying than any victory yell. I sat back, the adrenaline finally leaving my system, and looked out the window. The revenge was complete. The wrong was righted. But as I stared at the bustling street below, I realized the bitter taste of my victory. I felt no joy, no soaring happiness. I just felt empty. The years of planning, the cold calculation, the necessary emotional detachment, it had consumed me. I had achieved justice, but I had nearly forgotten how to live without the plot. I thought I would feel whole, but the silence was just the beginning of a different, harder war. The war to find the woman I was before the pain. The war to rebuild Naomi, not just her life. A week passed, and the initial shockwaves of the wedding disaster had settled into a persistent, ugly investigation. Apex Structures was under lockdown, Veronica and Alex were both lawyered up, and the media was having a field day. But I knew the story wasn't quite over. I had one more piece of ammunition, one last detail that would ensure their social and moral ruin was absolute. I met Michael, my lawyer, for lunch. He was tired but energized by the legal spectacle. Alex's team is trying to argue that the tip was malicious harassment, a clear case of a vengeful ex, and it would have been if the documents weren't authentic, I interrupted, placing my fork down. But they are. And they're about to face something far worse than just tax evasion. We need to release the final details. Michael looked skeptical. Naomi, we have them legally trapped. Why risk exposing more? You're safe. Because this isn't about safety, Michael. This is about ensuring they are permanently expelled from polite society. This is about their moral bankruptcy. I'm going to reveal what the fraudulent money was actually diverting. I leaned forward, lowering my voice even though the restaurant was noisy. Remember Alex's first wife, Elizabeth? The one he left before he married me? They had 2 children, and Alex was paying a substantial child support package, mandated by the court. Veronica hated it. She saw it as dead money, cutting into their new, rich life. Michael nodded slowly, his lawyerly mind processing the implications. The money they fraudulently diverted through the shell corporations, the one I exposed, was directly used to create a false trail. They weren't just avoiding taxes on their new income. They were generating phantom debt within Apex structures to justify an emergency personal loan that Alex took out, which he then claimed he needed to reduce his court-mandated child support obligations to Elizabeth. Veronica's crime wasn't just financial. It was an act of deliberate cruelty aimed at children who weren't even mine. Michael whistled softly. Targeting child support? That's low. That turns them from white-collar criminals into societal parasites. The judge will hate that. Exactly. The initial complaint was about the massive financial crime. The final revelation is about the personal, disgusting motive. This will kill their credibility with any jury, any judge, and certainly the public. I want you to leak the unedited communication. The email where Veronica suggests he should just let Elizabeth implore for the money to a reputable investigative journalist. That's a bold move, Naomi. It's playing with fire. They started the fire, Michael. I'm just providing the fuel, I said, a faint metallic taste of triumph filling my mouth. I want the world to understand that this was not about my shame. This was about their utter lack of a soul. I finished my story and looked at the camera, my confessional complete. I had achieved the legal victory, but this last act was the final, devastating, moral strike. I needed people to know that the woman who stole my husband and my business was also actively trying to hurt innocent children for a few extra dollars. The final curtain was about to fall on Alex and Veronica, and I was going to be there to watch the applause for justice. The final act played out quickly after I released the full context. Targeting child support payments turned the public conversation from scorned ex-wife seeking vengeance to mother ensuring justice for all victims of greed. The negative press was immediate and final. Alex and Veronica's carefully cultivated image as rich, aspirational entrepreneurs was utterly destroyed. They were separated by the ongoing investigation, each pointing fingers at the other to mitigate their own legal liability. The desfecho conclusion: the wedding never happened. Their engagement was formally dissolved, not by choice, but by legal necessity. Apex Structures was dissolved by court order, its assets sold to cover projected fines and restitution. Alex and Veronica faced severe civil penalties, professional disbarment from architectural bodies, and were forced to sell off every piece of property they owned, the lavish homes, the cars, the boat, to pay their mounting legal fees. Alex was forced to renegotiate a much higher child support agreement with Elizabeth, his first wife, a requirement that felt like the sweetest, most definitive victory of all. Veronica, the woman who made me implore for my professional life, was last seen fighting with her lawyer outside a Boston courthouse, her life reduced to public shame and impending legal charges. They were expelled from the world they craved. My mission was complete. I had stopped the cycle of their deceit, secured justice for my children, and legally dismantled their empire. I won. But here's my confession's polemical truth. It was not worth it. I spent 3 years of my best life, my mid-40s, the time when I should have been enjoying my teenage boys and rebuilding my happiness, planning their downfall. The meticulous detail, the cold calculation, the emotional energy required to maintain that front. It cost me. I am safe now, I am financially stable, and I have justice. But I feel no euphoria. I only feel the crushing weight of the time I lost, the part of my soul I had to harden to become the person capable of that act. When I looked at Alex's face at the wedding, I saw not a villain but a broken man who threw away everything for a corrupt woman. And when I saw Veronica crying, I felt nothing but a vast, terrifying emptiness. The triumph of vengeance did not fill the hole they had left in me. It just replaced the trauma with a different kind of scar, the scar of a woman who had to become ruthless to survive. I am free now. I am not plotting, I am not looking over my shoulder, and I am not financially humiliated. But the process of rebuilding my life has only just begun. I have to learn how to be Naomi again, the architect who loved design and laughter, not the auditor who loved revenge. The justice was necessary. The result was satisfyingly complete, and I would do it again to protect my children. But if I could tell my 40-year-old self anything, it would be this: don't let them take up so much space in your head. The true victory is forgetting them. I got my revenge, and they got exactly what they deserved. Now, I have to go find out what I deserve. The trial is over. The life sentence is lifted. The show is done.